Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how Göbekli Tepe was built, but why it was buried. Around 8000 BCE, after centuries of use, the people who gathered here began to fill the enclosures with rubble. Stone by stone, bucket by bucket, they buried the massive pillars under layers of soil, bones, and debris. This was no accident of time, no collapse or landslide. Archaeologists agree it was intentional. But why would anyone bury a temple of such scale? One theory is that the burial was a ritual act. Perhaps the site had served its purpose, and covering it was part of a sacred closure. Just as a fire is extinguished after a ceremony, Göbekli Tepe may have been put to sleep by its builders. Another theory is more practical. The structures may have become unstable, the pillars leaning, the walls crumbling. Burying them could have been a way to preserve what was sacred, protecting it for future generations. Yet there's also a darker possibility, that the builders feared what the site represented, that something catastrophic forced them to abandon it, and burying it was a way to seal the power or the memory beneath the earth. Were they hiding it from us? Whatever the reason, the act of burial had an unintended consequence. By covering Göbekli Tepe, the ancient builders preserved it. The soil became a protective blanket, shielding the carvings from wind and rain, saving the pillars from erosion. Without this burial, the temple might have vanished completely, leaving no trace at all. So, in a way, those ancient people were both the site's destroyers and its saviors. And because of that, more than 10,000 years later, we are still able to walk among the stones and feel the presence of a mystery older than history itself. So what does Göbekli Tepe truly mean for the story of humanity? For centuries, archaeologists believed that the sequence of civilization followed a clear order. First, humans learned to farm. Then they built villages. Villages grew into cities. Cities gave rise to religion, temples, writing, and eventually the world's first civilizations. But Göbekli Tepe does not fit this story. Here we find religion before farming. Here we find monumental architecture before cities. Here we find myth and ritual before writing. It suggests that our spiritual imagination, the desire to connect with God's ancestors or the cosmos, may have been the spark that ignited civilization. Think about that. The need to worship, to gather in ritual, to celebrate something larger than ourselves may have driven us to settle down, invent agriculture, and build the first permanent societies. Some archaeologists believe Göbekli Tepe was a meeting ground for tribes. Hunter-gatherer groups may have traveled great distances to congregate here, bringing offerings, holding feasts, and taking part in ceremonies. These gatherings would have required cooperation, sharing resources, negotiating, forming alliances. Over time, these rituals may have laid the foundations of social order. Göbekli Tepe may have been a kind of prehistoric parliament of the sacred, a neutral ground where rival groups found unity through ritual. But there is also a more provocative possibility. Some researchers suggest that Göbekli Tepe could be the remnant of a lost knowledge system, that perhaps before the Neolithic Revolution, humanity had already reached a level of sophistication we have not yet recognized. Could it be that Göbekli Tepe was part of a much larger network, a memory of an advanced Ice Age culture passed down through myth and legend? This is where the name Atlantis often arises. Not the Atlantis of fantasy novels or science fiction, but the idea that an advanced society may have existed during the Ice Age, wiped out by cataclysm, leaving only fragments behind. While mainstream archaeology is cautious, the sheer sophistication of Göbekli Tepe, its scale, artistry, and symbolism fuels the imagination. If true, then Göbekli Tepe is not only a temple, it is a doorway into a forgotten chapter of human history. And there's something else. Göbekli Tepe changes how we see ourselves. It reminds us that the people of 11,000 years ago were not primitive. They were thinkers, artists, astronomers, engineers. They were us. When we look at Göbekli Tepe, we are not staring at a crude beginning. We are looking at a parallel humanity, one that lived with myths, rituals, and a vision of the cosmos that still resonates today. It challenges us to rethink not just our history, but our very definition of civilization. Here is something astonishing. After nearly 3 decades of work, archaeologists estimate that less than 10% of Göbekli Tepe has been uncovered. Beneath the mound, dozens of stone enclosures remain buried, untouched for more than 10,000 years. Each one may hold new carvings, new symbols, new answers, or new mysteries. What we see today may only be the surface of a far greater complex. Every year, discoveries add new pieces to the puzzle. Tools, animal bones, fragments of sculpture. But so far, not a single dwelling has been found. No houses, no storage rooms, no graves. Who were the people who carved these stones? Where did they live? And why do they seem to have left behind no trace of themselves except for this monumental sanctuary? It is as if Göbekli Tepe was not tied to a single tribe or settlement, but belonged to a shared culture, a place where many groups came together, leaving little behind except their combined devotion. The purpose of Göbekli Tepe also remains unresolved. Some argue it was a temple, the earliest ever built, devoted to gods or ancestors. Others see it as a ritual center for death and rebirth, a place where the dead were mourned and the living connected with the afterlife. A few believe it may have served as an observatory, aligning with stars and tracking the heavens. After all, its builders would have lived under skies unpolluted by light, where the Milky Way stretched across the night like a river of fire. And then there are the symbols we still cannot decipher, the abstract H shapes, the strange animals, the recurring themes. They may represent constellations, myths, or knowledge we have lost. Until more of the site is revealed, the truth will remain out of reach. Yet perhaps that is part of its power. Göbekli Tepe is not just an archaeological site, it is a reminder of the depth of human imagination. It shows us that even in the earliest days after the Ice Age, humans were already reaching beyond survival, toward art, ritual, and meaning. It whispers to us across the ages, saying, "You are not the first to wonder about the cosmos. You are not the first to seek the divine." For over 11,000 years, Göbekli Tepe has kept its secrets. Buried beneath a hill, hidden from the world, it waited in silence until chance and curiosity brought it back into the light. What we have uncovered challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. It tells us that long before the first cities, before the first kings, before the first written words, our ancestors were already builders of monuments, carvers of myth, and seekers of the divine. Göbekli Tepe is a riddle written in stone. Who carved it? Why was it built? Why was it buried? We may never know the full truth. And perhaps that is the point. For every answer, a new question emerges. For every stone revealed, another lies waiting beneath the earth. But maybe the true meaning of Göbekli Tepe is not in the answers, but in the wonder it awakens within us. It reminds us that the story of humanity is deeper, older, and more mysterious than we ever imagined. It whispers that we are connected not just to the past 5,000 years of recorded history, but to a much greater saga, stretching back into the forgotten dawn of time. And so Göbekli Tepe stands, silent, timeless, eternal. A monument to mystery.
Thank you for watching. Coming up in the next video is the Mysteries of Atlantis. Don't miss it. Like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, and tell me what you think in the comments.